Hello everyone. Welcome to the EasyPower Tuesday Refresher webinar series. My name is Jim Chastain. I'm Applications Engineer here at EasyPower. And without a question, this is probably one of the more enjoyable or fun topics that we get to talk about. And it ends up being very creative capability. And frankly, I don't think we spend enough time talking about the capabilities. So hopefully it'll be something that you appreciate as we get into the heart of it. And as always, we like to start with a poll question, and we would appreciate your participation. No obligation or liability. But the first question is, do you need labels in something other than English? And for some people, this is more critical than others. But it's an easy place to talk about the capabilities involved in printing labels. So it looks like we have a quorum here. Here's how folks have weighed in on this one. All right, pretty much what I expected. And then the second question is, would you use a QR code, or by using a QR code, would you have better communication with field personnel or your client? And again, this is something that varies based upon the individual target market. And the bigger the organization, sometimes this is even more valuable. We see large dispersed organizations gravitating towards this way for a number of reasons. So here's how folks have weighed in on this. Appreciate the feedback. And let's jump into our presentation. And by all means, use the question entry block if you have anything along the way, and I'll try to answer as many as possible online. So what we're trying to do is cover some of the capabilities in the label editor that allow us to change text and color, translate date, translate units for some of the parameters that may be required for a label. And then we're going to touch on, as I mentioned, the QR code and what kind of flexibility it gives us in presenting information to the field. And then as kind of a bailout, how a text editor can be used to correct mistakes or help you understand what's going on in the label editor template. So a lot to cover. Now, just real briefly, I like to follow a procedure that allows me to, for one, not contaminate templates that are built into the tool. It lets me start with a fresh template anytime I want to make changes. But the basic advice is to save a copy of the template as you modify the contents, and that way you're not contaminating the original. And you can go in and find it if you've named it appropriately. You go in and find it with a text editor and or delete it if all goes wrong. So basically what you're going to see is creating a new template. We're going to locate the final translation of something that we're going to put on the label, and then set conditions for substitution, finalize coordinates as we match the original, and then as the last step, which has a potential for not making the text that we've just entered visible in a certain condition, be able to make sure we have it in the right place before we make it disappear. So all that stuff, as you start to do this, it'll make more sense as we go along. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just kind of touch on the fact that language translation can be done very simply just by replacing the text in the template with the translation or the text that you want to have in its place, And this can be done as simple as a copy and paste from a web translation page, which is what those of us that aren't multilingual may need to do. In some cases, the local knowledge of how the vernacular is used is helpful. So I think this translation translate into caution, not necessarily warning. And that's probably appropriate for the local workforce. And so these don't have to be a conditional replacement. We're still using the same contents of the default label, just overriding the English translation. So I'm not going to get much into that. I do want to talk a little bit about ANSI standard for labeling. In the OSHA terminology, danger means if the danger is not avoided, it will cause death or serious injury. Warning, under OSHA's terminology, means if the warning is not heeded, it can cause death or serious injury. And then caution means if the precaution is not taken, it may cause minor or moderate injury. So in the ANSI standard Z535.4, which is referenced as the label, if you will, standard guidelines, they give us 3 types of labels, content, and the construction of what's suggested. And there's a difference between a danger and a warning, both in the colors and in the symbols being used. And when we get to EasyPower, all we give you as a default standard is basically a warning label and the designation for shock hazard and arc flash hazard. That may or may not be appropriate for what your customer requires or for your situation. And I've had some people complain that, well, we're not matching the ANSI standard for higher energy level. So without getting into the details of why danger is no longer a category in IEEE or NFPA documentation, I want to just, if we had a client that said, no, I want a danger label and I want it to be ANSI standard compliant, and I want it to key off some specific energy level, then this is how you would do it. So let's jump into EasyPower and kind of walk through that process. So here I have my one-line diagram, and it has multiple voltage levels and multiple instant energy as I go into short circuit and fault all the buses. Now, as I've mentioned multiple times, automatically the arc flash hazard report is generated, and I get a subset of that, or at least a co-display of that, along with my one-line diagram with the arc flash, arrange for arc flash icon. Once I select the spreadsheet, no matter how I got here, the tool presents to me the label editor, and if I invoke that, it goes to a file location for arc flash label templates. And if we look at it, there's a host of probably 3 dozen different templates available. Now, what I've done is taken one of these and put it in a special folder so I don't get distracted by all the options. So I'm going to load templates, and from my documents, EasyPower 10.6 arc flash labels, I set up a subset or a subfolder called Advanced Label Examples. And now as I open that, I see I have my default 4x6 that I can take advantage of. So the first thing I want to do is make an adjustment to this and save it with a different name. And to do that, I go into the Label Designer up on the top. I start the editor, and I'm just going to put a blank into one of these spaces just to make a difference. So here under the device name, I'm going to put 2 extra spaces, and as I do, this allows me to save the edit as a new name. So I'm going to save as up here on the top left, put in the name 01 default. Now when I close this or save it, it drops me out of the label editor, and now when I start the editor again, it's now working on that new copy that I just created. So now I can make changes, and I can verify that if I come down to this label and I say I have extra spaces in it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, let's say my client wants to have a danger label created at a 35 calorie level. So first of all, we want to select a new symbol. Once I select the symbol, I see it's set up with a black warning flag. I want to create a new symbol by inserting an image, and by default it brings up the black warning. I want to choose the white warning, which is included in the library, and I want to, well, I take that back. I want to undo that. First thing I want to do is verify the coordinates for the existing label, and record them. So I'm at position of X at 0.65, Y is 0.11, width is 0.85, and the height is 1.10. Okay, the point being is I want to overwrite that location with this new image. So I'm going to insert an image file again. It sticks it in this particular place. I select the white warning image. Now I want to overwrite exactly the same position. So now 0.65 for X, 0.11 for Y. The width is 0.85. And the height is 1.1. Now that that perfectly lines up, I can see that it's over obscuring the old image. Now I want to make it conditional on some parameter. And so I'm going to make it conditional on instant energy. And again, the client wants this set up for 35 calories. Just it's some number that he's come up with and decided that that's what he wants to do. So I select instant energy, and I want this to be at equal or greater to 40 calories. Excuse me, 35 calories. Now, if this particular label is less than that, it won't show up. As I scroll through my buses, I see I have a 45 calorie, and it does show up. So the logic is working the way I want it to work. So that's number one. Let's go back to my original image. So I'm going to take this label and make it conditional, again on incident energy, and it's only displayed when the incident energy is less than 35. And again, by doing that, I can scroll through and I can see my images change as I want them to. All right, so that's that warning image. Next, I want to change the color of the warning of the background rectangle. I've selected the rectangle. This shows me the geometry and the default fill. And what I want to do is make the visibility condition upon, well, before I do that, let's go ahead and do the text. Select the text of warning. And I want to add additional text that overwrites this location. So on 3.35 and 0.30, and width is 0, height is 0, point size is 47. So I'm going to add text. In this case, I want the text to say danger. So I'm going to insert text. The text shows up right here. I'm going to change the point size to 47. I'm going to change the location to 3.5 and 0.35. And I can see that it's off to the right. So I'm going to change the X location till it overlays the existing warning. I'm going to replace the text with the word danger all in caps. Yeah, all in caps. You can get there. Now I want to set the color to white. And I want to set its visibility to be off the incident energy. And it's when the incident energy is greater than or equal to 35, I want it to show up. So let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good. It looks like I can move this up a little bit. So now we want to go back to the original warning label and make it conditionally displayed on incident energy less than 35. Now again, these are just arbitrary numbers that the client has asked for, and he has reasons for doing it. And so as we scroll through, we see that the color changes, the text changes. Now we're left with the warning sign, the warning color. So I select this external rectangle. I see it's not conditional on anything. Let's make it conditional on incident energy. And we want it red when the incident energy is greater than or equal to 35. And by default, we want it to be orange. So let's see if this works out. Okay, so now I've got a bus here at 45 calories and a bus at 45.7 that show a danger and a red background and the correct warning symbol. So at that point, the client's happy. Anything that's below 35 calories is showing the warning sign. Anything above 35 is showing the danger sign. So now I'm going to save this template, and this will go into the 01 and go on to something else. Okay, we want to translate the months to French. It turns out I've already set up the date, the year, and the date, the month date, and I want it to display in French. The month parameter is fixed, and that is it can only be displayed in either the number of the month or the English word. So what we're going to do is go back and make the change to our same template. And down here, if I select this label, I see I have the number of the year and the month printed in full. I also want to back off of that, take the month out, add a couple spaces, and then we want to insert the text. Now we're in the month of August, so I'm going to need to know what August is in French. So let's go to August. And you can't do without Google Translation. So the French translation is this word with the little caret on top. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come over here and Control V to put it in there. And so that looks pretty close. I want to put in another space just to make it a little bit separated. And it looks pretty good. Now, it's displaying, it's conditional upon nothing right now. I want it to be conditional upon the month number, and the month number equals 8. And then by default, I want it to be nothing. Now, the point to be making here is if I have any other number there, I don't want that. Yeah, I don't want this either. So if I have any other number in my label, okay, not month number. All right, so let's see if it works on, as long as it's 8, it's showing the August number. As long as it's not showing anything. Now this is kind of the example of what I meant about making a mistake. So what I'm going to do is discard my edits and start over. And I'll show you why that's an idea when we get to the word template, how to do it otherwise. So I'm going to start my edit, pick out the month, get rid of the month name, make it conditional upon the month number, and take it out of there when it's not the right number. So we should be in good stead here. Okay. Now, so the question is, what do we do about the other months? So when I want to put in some more text, oh, that's what I want to do. I'm making a mistake, sorry. I want to insert another text. Okay, sorry, I'm kind of messing this up. Let's take this one step at a time. I want to take my month off. I want to add text. I want to position that text right where it's going to be as far as alignment with the year. And I want to put in my translated word there. And it looks like my Y is just a smidgen off. Okay. Now this is what I want conditional. So I want this conditional upon the month number. And when the month number is equal to 8, I want it to display. And if it's not displaying, I put a default of 0. So right now with the month equal to 1, it's not displaying. If I increment to 8, it'll show up. Okay, so I've got my August month there for the 8th month. Now what do I do for January? I'm going to put in more text. I'm going to overlay exactly that location. What I'm going to do for January is, Chuck, I'll get to your question in a second. I want to translate the month of January. This is actually more fun than I'm making it look, so don't get discouraged. Copy. And put it right up here and replace the text that's there. Make it conditional on the month number. Now, when the month is 1, it's going to show up. And right now it's not showing up because we're showing a default of. Now the point that I want to make is I make sure this is lined up before I change this to the number 1. And I want it to be equal to number 1. All right, so it doesn't show up when the month is not January. To verify that it's lined up, I want to go to August. And take it back to 1. It'll no longer display. Okay, so the point being is that I have a different translation for each numbered month, but I make sure before I set that number, I make sure it's in the right place. So let's just do one more and you'll kind of make sure I've got my act together. So now I want to select something else, insert text. I want to translate February. I want to copy and paste. I want to replace my text. Let's try one more time. It's not picking it up. Sometimes I have a little bit of an issue with taking a copy from a different window. So I'm going to Control C to copy. I'm going to go back to the label template. Control V to paste. And it's still not doing it. Let's try one more time. Of course, it works much easier if you're there we go. All right, make it conditional upon the number of the month. And I want the number equal to 2. And I want to align it with my existing month. So right now it's displayed when it's showing 8, and it won't be displayed when I'm showing 2. So and I want to make the default blank. Okay, so right now I've got, and see, I can't reproduce the month of January or February because that comes as a parameter from the program. So anyway, I'm going to save this template, and now I've got at least 3 months that will show up correctly when the standard is done during that month. Okay. Chuck's saying, since the label does not show PPE level, what would you typically indicate the reference as where to customer to go to log? Okay, so the question, I guess as I understand it, is the reference point for the label for the PPE, and that can be accommodated with additional verbiage that says, let's see what we're showing here, refer to NFPA 70E 2018 table. So this is text that's put in manually, and it's displayed anytime that we're showing arc flash. So that depends upon what your client wants to do. And it also brings up the value of additional information on the label. So for starters, we try to minimize what's on there recommendation-wise to avoid confusion. So I'll get more to that in a second. So let's kind of go back with my translation stuff. Okay, so we want to translate units. Here, we're translating the limited approach boundary and the restricted approach boundary to French. And the problem is in the distance, we include both the units, inches, and feet, and we have to do a lookup for something I just demonstrated that includes the reference for both the distance and the units in French. And if you kind of look at what we're talking about in NFPA 70E, our table 130.4, we see that there's only 4 ranges if I stay below 15,000 volts, and there's 3 different text values. So it makes my lookup, if I combine conditional display for that value in inches and feet from this table with hide or display, it can be done relatively easy. Okay, another possibility is I want to implement a PPE policy. Let's say the company says I want my qualified people to all be using daily wear of 4 calories. And so rather than show anything below 4 calories on a label, I might put down do not open with less than 4 calorie PPE for all, and have that a condition for all buses less than 4 calories. Again, what we're trying to do is to disseminate information that's not confusing, and the company can train to that policy as they want. So that ends up being fairly straightforward. And if you got a question on how to do that, but basically it's if I'm less than or equal to 4 calories, use this text as a display. If it's greater than 4 calories, just show the instant energy in calories per square centimeter. That brings me to the QR code. So more and more people are starting to understand the need or the possibility of expanding not only the information that can be made available to the audience, but you can limit that information to a recognized subset of the population by making the access to the website, which this will link to, only available for certain personnel or certain passwords. So all that can be accommodated in the system side of the website. For instance, we can then scan the QR code with a portable device, a tablet or a phone, and it may be information that needs to be changed frequently. Rather than changing the label, we can just change that information on the web link that's included in the QR code. In addition, there may be more information that we can put on our label whether we like it or not, and copies of the one-line diagram can be displayed. The equipment manual, link to the manual can be included, or more information on PPE specifics. As Chuck is referring to, this could be the table that we encourage people to look up the PPE required for certain calorie exposure. And again, it can be limited to just specified personnel, so we have even less dissemination of information that is not that valuable or not that useful when it's in the wrong hands in the plan. So let me jump back into that and show us how we would do that. First of all, I'm going to close this template, go back to my one-line diagram, and what it amounts to is I can pick out any information on here to queue on the QR code. What I've selected to do is use the device code. So if we open up the dialog box for this MCC, every element has a device code. And so in my scheme of things, I'm going to code this particular location with the DC01 and then have my QR code refer to that. And this particular bus, I might have a different code and consequently a different link. This would be DC02, and the information that's displayed via the QR code would be different. And likewise on this one, I have a DC03. So I have 3 different codes. If I set up, and let me go back into my label editor. If I set up my my QR nomenclature to include that device code, let me design the labels. And let's go back to my so if I go into my label editor to see how this was set up, I inserted a QR code, and within that QR code, I've included the device code, which is a parameter in the database. So now when I scan this QR code, it is connected to this particular link, and this is where I can change the display for whatever information I want to disseminate. And so in some cases, it may override, it might be in lieu of all this other verbiage there. It may be, like I say, additional information. Extremely valuable, extremely useful, especially in large corporations where I may have multiple trades or multiple personnel in contact with the, or in view of the label. And by using a QR code, I can present information even to different groups of people based upon how I have limited access to that database. Now, so that's huge in some cases. It may make no difference at all to someone. It's a small organization, but it's something that large organizations are finding very useful. Now, as I promised, I'm going to go back out of this. We can modify the template with the text editor and or create or correct mistakes that we may have made along the way. And so just because I've made the display non-visible by accident, that doesn't mean that that particular template is not valuable. And we do it with a text editor. And let me kind of see if I can get one here. So what I'm going to do is go into that special folder that I created for this webinar. And it's under my Arc Flash labels, advanced labels. So this 01 default is that example I used to set up the examples I've been using. I'm going to open it with what I use as Notepad, but anything that will edit text is usable, not necessarily Word, but any text editor that's. And now this shows me the code that's in that HTML file. And if I scroll down, I can see, and I want to see here's some of the conditions I showed for the month. And so now I'm showing if the month equals 8, then I want my display to show the French word for August. Here's my condition for instant energy greater than 35 calories. I can change those from here and make this not equal to. In fact, I should have here's January's if it equals the month 1, then it'll display the French word for January. If I've lost this and I can't find the template or the image in my template, I can change this to not equal, and it will display January full time, and I can go back and correct it with my text editor. And you can see here I have January, February, and August all set up to display properly for that month. Okay, so it may sound a little bit complicated. It's relatively easy once you play with it for a little bit. And when we post the video for this webinar, I'll link a copy of this example template that I've been using, and you're more than welcome to play with it and see how it works for you. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. I appreciate everyone's attention. Certainly, if you've got questions, you're welcome to contact me, or if you need help modifying any template, you can contact tech support at easypower.com. And as I say, after the video is posted to the website, I'll include a copy of this default template so everyone can play with it. Thank you for joining us today, and I will answer any questions that come in afterwards via email. Thank you for supporting EasyPower. So long.